Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reviewing some tweets by Politics on comments by a lieutenant general in the Russian military. So we see here that Andre Gurv, the lieutenant general, is saying that Israeli bombings have no effect militarily. Armed people in Palestine are in shelter. Civilians are dying in residential buildings. We went through this in Syria when in Damascus, for example, they sit in underground tunnels and come out only when necessary. Hamas prepared 100%. It was not without reason that they did this. They have reserves of weapons and food. Okay, so what they're saying is that the current blocking of food, water, things like that is not actually hurting Hamas because they have a stockpile. It is just hurting the civilians of that country. And we see that from Israeli politicians. They're talking about the people of Gaza, the children of Gaza, of being not the same, not as worthy of life as the children of Israel. We see politicians such as the prime minister, or I think it was the prime minister, who said that they are the children of darkness. And so these various dehumanization efforts are really having no effect on Hamas, but they are killing a ton of Palestinian children. And I will say this over and over again. I don't want to say shocked, but I'm definitely disappointed that Western Christians are supporting Israel while Israel bombs churches. It boggles the mind that they're willing to do that. They want to bring about the Antichrist so much that they're willing to actually allow other children or other Christians and children of any religion to be murdered in order to allow that to come to pass. So I don't understand why anyone would want to bring about the Antichrist, but that is how Christian Zionists think. So, okay. Israel strikes, destroys buildings. Hamas can immediately mine it carefully. It'll be a good fortified area, ideal. The Israelis are shown in columns on tanks, on infantry fighting vehicles. What are they waiting for? Waiting for drones to fly over them. Okay, so a couple things here. One is tanks have largely been found to be ineffective in most types of conflict. If you have completely open terrain, sure, tanks can be beneficial as a kind of zone of control. But when you're talking about urban warfare, particularly in modern times when you have a lot of anti-tank missiles and things like that, tanks are just largely ineffective. I would say that the more effective a tank is dependent on, are they able to transport a lot of people rapidly across the battlefield? That's really the most important part of a tank at this point. But them just serving as this huge vehicle that can push forward on the battlefield, it's not as beneficial as it used to be, just because of the fact that the arms, the military arms that the average person can use on a battlefield can really damage a tank to the point where it's more of an inconvenience than a benefit. And so Israel is finding that out now. Russia found that out on the battlefield in Ukraine. And from what I understand of one type of tank, I think it's like called the Merkava or something like that, about 12% of all of Israel's tanks of that type have been destroyed either on the Gaza battlefield or on the northern Israel, southern Lebanon battlefield. And so shocking numbers already, but we are finding that tanks are just not as important anymore. And we see that the Israelis have been hesitating to actually enter into Gaza. It sounds like they certainly want to. That was the original plan, is to displace more people of Gaza, and Egypt is not allowing it. They're refusing to open the border crossing because they know that the people of Gaza will not be able to go back into their country. They'll lose more land. And so Israel is stuck in a bit of a situation here where the second they actually have boots on the ground in Gaza, the war enters what I would say is the second phase, where Hezbollah will likely directly attack Israel because Israel will be fighting a war on multiple fronts. And it sounds like Syria is going to be another battleground. And then you have other countries like Iran and Yemen who can fire missiles from afar. And they also have offered to send volunteers to fight in order to support the Palestinian cause. So there's a ton of things that will happen if Israel actually has boots on the ground within Gaza. Okay, so back to this. What are they waiting for? We went through this during a special military operation. Tanks in urban areas are practically ineffective. The main thing here is the action of the assault troops. What is this? Remember how they took Artemovsk? Bakhmut. Remember what losses there were. Something similar awaits the Israelis. It won't work out otherwise here. If we look more broadly, the Americans are trying to drag the Middle East into war. Apparently, they decided not to stand ceremoniously with Israel. In this case, the damage to Israel would be unacceptable. I don't know what he's going for there. I mean, the Americans are definitely standing with Israel in every way, shape, or form. When they say that today some missiles were brought into Iran, I assure you such statements are a fallacy, because in military, everything is planned long ago, and they've already determined all the targets. The visit of our leader, Vladimir Putin, to China, the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the DPRK, North Korea, the President's visit to our command post in Rostov are synchronized events. The President heard the reports of the Chief of the General Staff, probably the district commanders, personally listened to the reports in order to understand what the problems there are and ways to solve them. Okay, so just as a bit of a background, Soviet Union initially supported Israel, but eventually over time they tended to support more of the Arab states against Israel. However, that really didn't benefit Soviet Union because of the fact that the Arab states around Israel were incredibly weak after World War II. And so Israel had a lot of Ashkenazi Jews that came from Europe, and they had a lot of technical know-how, a lot of understanding about how to create a modern nation. And it took a while for the Arabic countries to catch up, which is why Israel tried to take as much land as possible early on, because they knew that they would lose their benefit over time, their technological prowess benefit, competitive edge over time. And so we're seeing now that Russia is having to reassess things. Instead of balancing both Israel and the Arabic states, which it had to do after it realized that the Arabic states were continuously losing to Israel, instead of doing that anymore, they realized that their initial actions of supporting the Arabic states might be more beneficial for them because of the fact that the Arabic states have grown in power massively. I read somewhere that I think it was Hezbollah has something like 40 times the amount of missiles that it had whenever it came into conflict with Israel last time. I believe the last conflict was in the early 2000s, 2006, if I remember correctly. They don't quote me on that. And so the Arabic powers are getting stronger at a much faster rate. And so they are near parity with Israel in a lot of cases. And when you consider things like the manpower advantage, they're far stronger than Israel in cases like Iran. And so you're seeing these dividing lines between essentially the entire Islamic world facing off against Israel and the United States, it looks like. So should be concerning to anyone in the United States at this point. Okay, so back to the topic. I think the main topic was the presence of 2 aircraft carrier groups in the Mediterranean. So you're seeing that Russia, China, United States are all moving assets, military equipment to this area because we are extremely close to World War III, like closer than I thought we'd get this decade. So I would definitely encourage you to stay tuned, not only to my channel, but to other similar channels, because this is going to be incredibly, incredibly important to understand what's going on in order to figure out what to think of this conflict, how to prepare for the conflict, et cetera, et cetera. So on board these ships, according to my calculations, there are approximately 750 to 800 Tomahawk missiles, which cover a decent amount of territory of the Russian Federation. That's a decent amount of power. Our president immediately decided to put MiG-31 with Kinzhal missiles on combat duty. For some reason, everyone imagines that one plane with one Kinzhal will fly along the Black Sea, but everything is much more global. Firstly, this is the use of all reconnaissance systems linked into a single information system with the issuance of specific target instructions to control point. Okay, interesting. If an aircraft enters the airspace of the Black Sea, then it must have a support echelon protecting it from enemy air attacks, air defense systems, and everything else. Okay, so what he's essentially saying there is if they're moving a few aircraft over there, there's so much support that's necessary for these aircrafts that they're actually moving a lot of military equipment over there. And so this is a big deal. It's more than just a few aircrafts moving over. In front of us are 2 aircraft carrier groups equipped to the teeth, capable of hitting targets on our territory of our country. Should we just stand there and pick our noses? We must react normally. Yes, the Kinzhal missiles itself is extremely effective, capable of hitting any U.S. warship. That's true. If the entire Middle East is drawn into the war, which I believe is increasingly likely, Aircraft carrier groups try to strike the territory of Iran, then Iran will not remain silent. They have targets ready, all critical objects. They will attack them in different ways, despite the Iron Dome and everything else. Okay, so I've talked about this in another video as well, which is that Russia in Syria, from what I understand, is allowing Iranian military equipment to land in Russian bases, which is a huge thing because that helps indicate to me that, one, if Israel tries to attack that base, then it's attacking Russia, and so Russia will be drawn into the conflict. Two, if someone attacks Iran, then it looks like there's increasing evidence that Russia might join. And it's obvious why at this point. I mean, think about this logically for a second. The entire West was saying how, oh, they're not directly involved in the conflict in Ukraine. They're just supplying military equipment, training the Ukrainian military, et cetera, et cetera. And Russia's saying, no, you are directly involved. You're definitely directly involved. Like supplying equipment, military trainers within Ukraine, things like that. That's direct involvement in this conflict. And the United States said, no, we aren't. And then in this conflict, the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023, United States is saying, oh, Iran, you are directly involved because you provided equipment to Hamas. And so you could just see the complete double standards of America at this point, where it's saying completely opposite things in two conflicts that are occurring simultaneously. And it expects the rest of the world to believe it. But apparently some people in the West still believe this. They still think that United States can supply equipment and not be directly involved in Ukraine, but Iran can potentially supply equipment to Hamas, and they are considered directly involved. So the United States is using that to potentially attack Iran. Israel has been attacking Iranian targets within Syria, things like that. So a lot of wild stuff is going on right now, and definitely keep track of this because it's important. Okay, so this lieutenant general is saying that drones and missiles from Yemen are not a provocation, but reconnaissance and force, revealing the ability of an aircraft carrier strike group to destroy an entire aircraft. They will see what happened, how, and what. The special military operation taught that you can shoot down 10 UAVs, so the aircraft vehicles. I can't remember what the U stands for there. You can shoot down 20, but when 100 are flying, then even modern systems are not able to resist. Therefore, America is hiding an aircraft carrier group behind Cyprus. Okay, so what he's saying here is that in the first part, he's saying that you're testing the systems in order to better prepare for it in an actual conflict. And that's really what's been happening in Ukraine too. I don't understand why America is doing things the way that they're doing right now, because it's not a winning strategy, where Russia has all the time in the world now to prepare for Western equipment. And now you're seeing even the Yemenis preparing for Western equipment by testing them to see how they track and how they destroy missiles and drones. And so this is just preparing for the upcoming conflict. You see here that they're saying that things like tanks are ineffective, but things like drones, yes, you can shoot down a few, but if you have a huge swarm of drones, they actually can make a decent impact on the battlefield, because anti-air defenses can only shoot down a few of them. So interesting stuff there. Let's see what else he has to say. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief, Vladimir Putin, probably discussed the situation in the Middle East and most likely set tasks that could only be discussed and agreed on face-to-face. Okay, so they're talking about how Vladimir Putin has gone around the world, talked to people like Xi Jinping. He has various people within his government talking to places like North Korea, Iran, et cetera, et cetera. And they're all assessing how prepared are we for World War III, I bet. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like, are you taking this target? Am I taking this target? Like, who's taking these different targets? And so I don't think America understands how poorly prepared they are for this conflict. Like, at this point, the United States has been trying to create things like hypersonic missiles for years, and it has been completely unable to do that. Russia has hypersonic missiles, China has hypersonic missiles, Iran has hypersonic missiles. So like, it's going to be, if Iran or Russia get directly attacked, I think they're all going to get involved at this point. I don't think any of them want that, because they all understand, like the Sun Tzu saying, don't like distract your enemy if they're making a mistake. But at this point, if one of them gets attacked, they have to support each other. United States is really good at playing whack-a-mole, where they will pick off one at a time and beat them up and then go for a next target and the next target and next target. And they understand that. Russia understands that it's essentially directly in conflict with the United States already. And so they're itching to take this conflict to America directly. And so I think if Iran got involved, I think Russia would get involved. And if Russia gets involved, I think China would get involved. And the thing is, if a Russian base is attacked in Syria because the Russians allowed Iranian equipment and soldiers to land at that base, then Russia gets involved. And Iran, they realize that, oh, we've been getting attacked by the Israelis, but now Russia has our back, so we can get involved. And so they will get directly involved. And so and the thing is, as I said, there's a number of scenarios where Russia is the one that gets involved first. There are a number of scenarios where Iran is the one that gets involved first. But either way, if one of those gets involved, the other one gets involved. And then China gets involved because they have to support Russia because it's in their best interest to have a calm northern border. And so they don't want to have a Western puppet in Russia. And so either way, this is really, really concerning and really, really shaping up to be, and this is not hyperbole, it's shaping up to be World War III. So I'm extremely glad that I'm in southern Philippines. This is not a major military target, so I'm not going to be the one facing the repercussions of this. I feel unfortunate for you if you are in America or are in a likely battle zone of World War III, but that's the situation we're in right now. Okay, so let's finish this up. There'll be a lot of different theories about where we will go next, but there's no need to run ahead of the locomotive. Our Supreme Commander knows exactly where to go. Yeah, he's been top-notch. Vladimir Putin has been top-notch at figuring all this stuff out. Like, really keen leader they have there. I really hope he's focused on succession planning, because they need to have another Vladimir Putin in office after he's getting old. After he's gone, they have to have another one of him. So succession planning is extremely important when you have situations like this where you have I would say, very unstable country in Russia, but a really strong leader is able to keep it together. We will monitor the developments of events. The army is in combat readiness, obviously, because they've been training. They have a ton of experience from the Ukraine conflict, carrying out tasks. Today, the initiative is on our side. This is even recognized by our opponents. Yeah, I do think America and the West realizes that they're losing majorly right now. And while their opponents don't want to get wrapped up into a direct conflict, there are scenarios, which I've mentioned, which could lead them to directly get involved in conflict with the West, even though they'd rather just see the West decline slowly on their own. So we'll see what happens. It seems like the major flashpoint is going to be this Judeo-Islamic War 2023. Okay, so they're just giving a wrap-up of the person these comments are from. Andre Gurv is a Russian military leader, lieutenant general, politician, and statesman. Deputy of the State Duma of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, and is a member of the State Duma Commission for reviewing federal budget expenditures aimed at ensuring national defense, national security, and law enforcement. He is also a member of the State Duma Committee on Defense. Oh, wow, this guy... Okay, so I knew he was a prominent figure within Russia. I just didn't realize how many qualifications he had specifically related to this topic. So really what we just read, if anyone would know what's going on, it'd be this guy. So him saying things like how important drones are, how ineffective tanks are, how they might get wrapped up in war, things like that. Like, all of these are even more important to understand, come from someone who is a direct insider for things like this. So again, this is an article brought to you by Geopolitics that I provided commentary on. If you found this video to be informative, please give us a thumbs up on both YouTube and Rumble. We're going to eventually be on podcasts as well, because I read everything off. You don't need to visually watch this. In fact, when I'm watching these back, I just listen to them. And so we're going to be on podcasts eventually as well. We did have short form content, and once we have reasons to actually create the short form content, we will be creating more of the short form content. So a lot of improvements occurring. So I appreciate you continuing to watch, and I appreciate any thumbs up, things like that you can give the channel. It definitely helps us. And please subscribe, again, both Rumble and YouTube, and please leave a comment in the comment box. I read them both on, again, Rumble and YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.